Hey, welcome to Dive Down. Before we get started here, I've actually never done an official intro to any of my videos. So that being said, nice to meet you. I'm Squirrel Thief, also known as Sean, and I make MTG EDH content and play variety games with friends. Other than that, we're going to get started with this Dive Down. So Dive Down is going to be a series where I go over commanders previously covered in the 1-3 lessons, and I'll look further into the deck list, looking for, different plays you can make, why did I choose this card over another card, discussing everything few and far between from like price, do I own this card in paper, all that good stuff. So obviously this is going to be a bit more of like a talk. It won't have so much as images and such, it'd be more of a discussion. So first off, we should probably discuss Umbris. Umbris itself, whatever Umbris is. But Umbris is the Fear Manifest, and I'm gonna assume that the 1-3 lesson video, I won't be covering everything because the 1-3 lessons was just a brief overview, So I'm not gonna go too much. I'm not gonna read every single card verbatim. But here we have Umbris, right? So definitely jumped up in price, and we'll be using the TCG player prices for this, so it's like around 420. Nice. And most of it comes with like the mana base and a few other cards that really make it kind of jump up there. We'll just talk about the price in just a moment because I know that will turn some people away, and I still think it's a really fun build. So, hang in there. However, Umbris, Fear Manifest, is a 5 mana 1/1 essentially, and that's what I love telling people at the table. Oh, I have a 5 mana 1/1 commander. But really, what Umbris is it gets +1/+1 for each card you exile, and whenever Umbris or another Nightmare Horror enters the battlefield under your control, target opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a land card. So that seems relatively straightforward. You want to be Exile Tribal. The problem with Exile Tribal is it makes opponents salty, and you'll die soon. And that is something that I've had issues with, where, if obviously someone is like giving you the stink eye at the table, maybe target them a bit less, but spread the love with the exile, and that's actually an important thing I want to talk about for Umbris. The game plan that Umbris has, it's a little parasitic in who you want to keep alive. So let's say you put all your eggs in one basket. You're like, okay, I'm gonna exile this person. So you have someone with like 15, 20 cards in exile, and then they get knocked out of the game. So they lose. That means Umbris is back to being like a 1/1, maybe like a 3/3 if you've targeted other opponents. That's not good. That's really bad. So for that, spread it around. But if you're really intent on trying to save someone for last, target them a little bit more. Typically, maybe the person who could even be a little bit behind or like, not in danger of losing the game, someone who's not going to be targeted. So that way you're like, okay, you have a reliable source to keep Umbris's power high. Just one thing I thought was really interesting about how the deck plays, and one of the reasons I like it so much. So we're going to kind of go down the list here. Next, we have Horrifying. Horrifying is this little category I made where the Umbris power matters kind of comes into play. So you have Essence Harvest and Rite of Consumption. Both rely on Umbris's power being high, so we can just burn opponents straight out. Just bang, straight to the dome. And both of them have life gain, which is nice here. Lose X life, gain X life, greatest power among creatures you control. Not bad. And we do have several high power creatures. We have like a 6/6 here. Other than that, most of our creatures are relatively low powered, unfortunately. Rite of Consumption is the same thing. It's just black fling, pretty much, and then you gain life, dealt that way. It's nice. It only hits players as well. This is a non-categorized thing. Sorceries here. So Time Warp. Time Warp just has a little bit of combos in the deck. And before I go into combos and like what the deck is about, it's an ETB style Umbris deck. Now, is it looking to win? Yes, absolutely. I think in EDH, unless you're doing like a group hug theme, I think your deck should strive to win. But then that comes like, okay, well, why am I not running combos on turn 3? Then it becomes CDH. We're not looking for CDH. We're looking for like fun synergies and ways that you can win with some interesting cards. That's my take on EDH. That's why I think it makes the game interesting. And it's become a little cookie cutter here and there, but I think ETB Umbris is really, really fun. Love ETB Umbris. I'm getting off topic here. Topic is Time Warp. Why is Time Warp in here? Offers is like a 5 mana growth spiral sometimes, it sucks to suck, but other times, you can get extra combat step with Umbris, maybe knock someone out with commander damage, Could also do extra ETBs, you know, of Conjurer's Closet, get those triggers going. Overall, it's utility. I like it. And that's another thing you'll find. Some of these cards have multiple uses for utility. Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Yeah. Auto included in the Umbris deck. Exile cards. Top library to have exiled cards of total mana 20 or more. Yes, please. This single-handedly will make you the enemy at the table for a little bit. People will be like really worried about you, so be careful when you use this, you know. Fractured Sanity. Okay, time to talk about Mill and Umbris. As I've gone through Umbris, it used to be somewhat of a mill pile, and then focusing on exiling opponents' graveyards, so you can get this huge, you know, one-shot. Okay, you know, mill half of your library with, let's see, it's over here. Maddening Cacophony. This is in the maybe board. I wasn't sure about this card. It's not for me. But, you know, kicker for 6. Each opponent, you know, mills 8 for 2. The spell's kicked. It said each opponent mills half the library rounded up. You know, 6 mana, then you play like a Pachuca Bog, or best case scenario, bam, you know, Umbris is huge again. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty strong if you're going for the win that turn, but most of the time I find it a little bit too janky. You know, Umbris could die in response, the spell could get countered, you get killed, you know, yada yada yada. Not fun, for me at least, but maybe you can give it a try. Those are the sorceries, and that's not the only sorceries, by the way. Like, we have some in removal over here. I've just put them in different categories. All right, next we have artifacts. These are kind of our miscellaneous, like, making Umbris strong, you know, going in for the kill. Shadow Spear. Shadow Spear is a pretty expensive card right now. I mean, you can even put Loxodon Warhammer in here, maybe. This card, though, if you can afford it, is pretty good. You know, +1/+1, trample and lifelink, I find really good. Goes well if Umbris, when he's a high power, you know, get some of that life back. Because against go wide strategies, we have to rely on our board wipes. Otherwise, we're gonna have to be taking hits. Like, this deck takes a lot of hits. Swift of Boots, enough said. Whisper's Oak Cloak, Unblockable, and Shroud. Shroud can be a bit of a problem sometimes. I can see this maybe getting filtered out for something else. Not bad. I'm fine with these. So, Instants. Both of these, funny enough, both of these are cards that I heavily advocate for in this type of deck. Starting with Mystic Reflection. This card is cracked, just in general. I'm going to be putting this in my Snobbies deck, Snow Zombies. I'll be making a video on eventually. Oh man, I can't wait to talk about it there. But yeah, you choose target non-legendary creature. So let's say, you know, choose target non-legendary creature. We'll choose maybe a Ruthless Technomancer, which we'll get into later. A Mole Drifter. Mole Drifter would be good. You know, enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards. So we're going to choose Mole Drifter. The next time one or more creatures or planeswalkers enter the battlefield this turn, they enter as copies of the chosen creature. So that means if, like, okay, I have a Mole Drifter on the field and I draw Phyrexian Rager. Okay, I'll play my Phyrexian Rager after casting Mystic Reflection. It comes in as a copy of Mole Drifter, and instead of drawing a card and losing a life, I'll draw 2. And there's a lot of flexibility with this because, you know, I have Hostage Taker in the deck list, so, you know, a bit of removal there. Agent of Treachery. This card is very much late game. Don't play that. Don't ramp out to it and slam it. You might just die. But, you know, Aether Channeler is nice for the little modes here. Archaeomancer. Like, it's just, I don't know. Really good card. Really nice. You could always use it on opponents' creatures as well. That's one of the reasons this card, I think, is just insanely good. You know, they're playing Atraxa. They're playing a really scary commander, Corvold. All right, well, that Llanowar Elf, how would you like another one? And it doesn't have to be their own creatures. It's just a chosen creature. So, you know, let's say the 2/2 zombie is sitting over there. Bang, you're now a 2/2 zombie. Figure out how to get rid of it. Yeah, for Mystic Reflection, very good card. A lot of flexibility. Highly recommend. Moving on to Stinging Study. Now, Stinging Study, 5 mana, you draw X cards, lose X life, where X is the mana value of the commander you own on the battlefield or in the command zone. Watch out for getting exiled in response or anything weird. I don't really know as this resolves. Like, maybe there's something about that. Like, I guess if it gets exiled before it resolves, you can put it in the command zone, then you still get the draw. But there's some shenanigans going on here where this card could, you know, somehow fail. Just a little bit of warning. But overall, 5 mana, instant speed. I think that's what really draws me into this card, is that instant speed. Draw 5 from just flat from your commander. Umbris would be 5 mana. Okay, you know, worth it. I would say Stinging Study is worth it if your commander is 5 or above. Sometimes people put it at 4. for a 5 mana, lose 4, draw 4, that's still pretty good. That's still all right. But I think my comfort zone is 5. So if I'm playing like Commander, a black Commander, that's I don't know. Captain Ingrathrod was in this deck list. Maybe Yannette. I could put this in Yannette, funny enough. I've not done that actually. What am I doing? Oh, I'm putting that in my Yannette deck next. But yeah, really interesting card. It's not interesting, but however, I think it's very strong. It's nice to have late game. You act like you're holding up counter spells. Really, you're not holding up a counter spell at all. You're not holding up removal. You're just going to refill your hand. All right, so moving on. Creatures. These are just creatures that I didn't really find another category for. Like these guys are ETBs. These people are enablers over here. Maybe some removal creatures. These just kind of fall into a miscellaneous category. Aboleth Spawn, Flash Horror. You get to copy an opponent's triggered ability from an ETB. All right, we're already in ETB theme. Why not keep it going? It's okay. Word 2 never hurts. Flesh Writher. Oh my goodness, I love Flesh Writher. I have already probably gone over it enough in the 1-3 lesson video. But for 4 mana, 3-3, pay 3, sacrifice this, go look for a 4 mana CMC card in our deck. So Spark Double, Sakashima, Ruthless Technomancer, Hostage Taker, Gonti, Atris. And that's not even including Urtai down here. Urtai is also available. Can't do it at instant speed. Now, it does say sorcery speed. That is the one thing about the card I want to point out here. The Shuffle Your Library, play only as a sorcery. Unfortunate. Wish it was instant speed, but it's okay. Still love this card, and it's because it gives you the trigger for Umbris being a horror when it enters. Then you go get another horror like Ravenous Chupacabra. Man, it's so sick. Love that card. Spellskite. Spellskite is Spellskite. Pretty good. Protect your commander, do all that. He's at $7 right now. Hopefully he gets a reprint. Wow. I remember when I picked him up for like 3 or so. That's wild. Yeah, every now and then I'll maybe adjust the prices here, especially going into the mana base. We're going to be talking about this. So mana base is a little bit special, and it's mostly because I've gotten lucky opening up some packs over time. Like back when Kamigawa first released, I did open up, I think it's like a holographic Otawara. So it's actually probably more like 30-ish here. Otawara is fine. But I'm going to go over the ones I think you should really be looking for in your Umbris deck. Besides all the dual lands, all yada yada yada, if you can afford it, that's good. Witch's Clinic I like. $12 for Witch's Clinic. Yikes. I don't think Witch's Clinic is not even close to being worth $12. Not worth it. We already have some Sources of Life Gain in the deck. It's here because I like the additional Sources of Life Gain, but that one might even get cut. So that's funny. Thespian Stage is always just a nice card in general. $1, pay 2, tap, comes a copy of target land, except it has this ability. Okay, Water a Grave, maybe for one of my opponents. Maybe they have a Reliquary Tower and have a lot of cards in hand. So it's serviceable. Shizo, also unfortunately has jumped back up in price, but look for a reprint on this one, because black, tap, target legendary creature gains fear until end of turn. Now, it's target legendary creature, which, fear, by the way, real quick, it can't be blocked except by artifact creatures and or black creatures. Okay, so why am I reading this to you? Well, that's because you can use it on your opponent's creatures. So, if your opponents are swinging in on each other and you're like, okay, I'll give you a little bit of an assist here. Make their commander, maybe make a powerful lord that they're using unblockable. You can maybe take out an opponent doing that. Just surprise, hey, maybe you were trying to block. Nope, goes right by. Plaza of Heroes, kind of mid, is in the deck because I find it serviceable. Myriad Landscape I will put into pretty much any of my dual color decks, anything that's a 3-color deck that's not running green. It is important that Myriad Landscape is not in green because it's not worth it in my opinion. Unless you're doing, obviously Landfall. Myriad Landscape, though, can kind of get you up and do a little bit of pseudo ramping in a non-green colors. Otherwise, green just has better options. There's no point in running it. Let's see, I think that's about it. Obviously, Bajuka Bog, and you may be wondering, okay, well, where's your Graveyard Exile? Umbris seeks to exile cards. Why are you not doing that? There's a point where it becomes too much, and I didn't want to focus on Graveyard Exiling. Again, I mentioned that earlier, as much as the ETB exiling. So that's why Scavenger Grounds is over here on the sideboard. It's just I had too many colorless lands. You know, I was starting to like get two colorless lands at times, and then it became my deck became really clunky, and I was unhappy with it. So I did end up cutting Scavenger Grounds. I know it's a bit of a hot take, but that's because I do have an Ashiok Dreamrender and a Dothy Voidwalker to help deal with graveyards as well. And we'll come back to that in a second. We'll also be talking about Dimir Aqueduct when we go over MDFCs. But before that, we're going to talk about these two cards under Cut. These guys are in the deck, as you can tell. They're not in the maybe board, and then down here, not for me board, which is goodness. That's stuff I've played tested and I've not quite liked. But Cut, Brainstealer Dragon is just a 7 mana high curve horror that I get to steal opponents' things at the end of turn. It's serviceable. It's a horror. It's a flyer. Could probably make the cut. Just put in a horror you like, I'd say. There's the new Duskmourn set coming out. As it's getting released, I could definitely see a horror or a nightmare taking the place of Brainstealer Dragon. Phyrexian Rager. In the 1-3 lesson video, I know I'm a hypocrite, but that was 6 months ago, in my defense. I said it wasn't really making the deck. And then I thought about it, and I was like, well, it does trigger Umbris and replaces itself, and, you know, it still does the ETB theme. So it's in the deck for now. Hopefully I can get another ETB creature in its spot, because I still think 3 mana for a 2/2 with that effect is not the greatest. But overall, Brainstealer Dragon is the big kind of eyebrow raise here. So, MDFCs, Modal Double Face cards is what I think it stands for. We have Glasspool Mimic, Hagra Mauling, Hydroelectric Specimen, and Malakir Rebirth. I took out Jawari Disruption in favor of Hydroelectric Specimen. And there's several new MDFCs from Modern Horizons 3. I have not really looked too far into putting some in the deck. I know there's probably several, probably better ones than these. These are just the ones I'm running. Glasspool Mimic allows you to copy an ETB creature. Cool. Kind of an ETB trigger on itself. Flip it over. Fortunately, tapped blue. In fact, all these are going to be tapped except for Hydroelectric Specimen, which is interesting. We'll get that in a second. Hagra Mauling, destroy target creature. It's removal on a modal land. It's okay. Serviceable. It's fine. Malakir Rebirth. I love Malakir Rebirth in this deck. Holy smokes. So, gives you the ETBs when the creature dies. So, if someone's swinging it on you, okay. I'll trade you. I'll trade my Baleful Strix for your 4/4 creature. Okay. Well, no, I won't actually. I'm going to get that Death Touch off. Baleful Strix is over here. Malakir Rebirth. It's going to come back down and draw me yet another card. You can also do this in response to board wipe because it is instant speed. Downside, you lose 2 life. Okay, whatever. Tapped, add black. This card jumped up to $7, and I can see why. It was pretty good in Scam too, I think. Electric Specimen. Hydroelectric Specimen is a 3 mana 1/4 flash. In his battlefield, you may change the target insert sorcery spell of a single target to Hydroelectric Specimen. So what can we do here? It's only instants or sorceries, not abilities. But, if maybe your opponents are like, okay, I want to draw cards equal to this creature's power, at targets or something. Okay, well, I'm going to yoink that. Okay, I'm going to remove Umbris, Swords to Plowshares. I won't counter it, but you know what? You can Swords to Plowshares my Hydroelectric Specimen. Boop. Pretty good. And flip the card. This is good. Really good. In this battlefield, you may pay 3 life if you don't enter as tapped. So that means it can also be an untapped blue source when we need it to be. Really think this is a really good include to most blue decks, at least the ones that I play. Dimir Aqueduct works really well. Any of these bounce lands, if you're running MDFCs, I recommend you play at least a bounce land in your deck. Because you can get back the MDFC if you play it for like a tapped blue or a tapped black early in the game. You can get it back for the card side. Really nice. Really love that. It feels so good because you're like, okay, well, I'll play Dimir Aqueduct. You have enough mana. Let's say you're sitting at like 7-8 mana. Well, I'll play a tapped land. I'll return Malakir Rebirth back to my hand, and now I can hold up Malakir Rebirth. Wow. Wow. Feels really good. Love that. So, moving on to enablers. Enable, these are our enablers for our ETB theme. So we have anywhere from, Animate Dead to just your typical flicker effects or maybe bounce effects. We'll go over not really every single one, but just a generic, why is it in here? Animate Dead. I found this better than Reanimate. because you can flicker your own creature and get it back. It's also cheaper than Reanimate. Reanimate's like, what, $10 or so? Where's Reanimate? Oh, no, it's actually not that much cheaper. It's $7 for Reanimate right now. I got a reprint, I think, eventually. But I just liked Reanimate Dead instead. You know, like it's -1/-0. Enchant creature card in a graveyard. You can still ETB it. Animate Dead falls off. You still get to keep the creature. Conjurer's Closet. Conjurer's Closet is a typical non-white instep, bounce target creature. Exile, no, well, not bounce, sorry, flicker. Exile target creature control, return to the battlefield under your control. It's pretty solid. Displacer Kitten, $13 right now, pretty pricey, but if you can afford it, I highly recommend. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you get to flicker a target creature you control. Wow. Every time I've played this card, it's pretty much kill on sight from my opponents, or else I start getting too much value. If you're gonna play this card, keep it a little bit protected. Dourport Mage. Dourport Mage is from the new set Blue Burrow, and I figured that this is a really good fit for the deck. Whenever one or more of the creatures you control leave the battlefield without dying, draw a card. Okay, well, we're doing that a lot, so that's sick. And if one of my opponents exile one of my creatures, there's a lot of exile board wipes nowadays. Okay, I get to just draw a card off it. Plus, I get to pay 2, tap, return another target creature you control to its owner's hand in response to something. Okay, I have 2 mana, I'll just bounce her. What are you gonna do now? Maybe get 2 removal spells out of them. Really love this card. Endless Evil. Endless Evil combos. So besides Endless Evil just being a good, at the beginning of your turn, make a 1/1 of enchanted creature. You get it back. You get Endless Evil back if the creature dies, if it was a horror, which is nice. That does come into play sometimes. But this actually goes into combo of a kind of a janky Archaeomancer combo. In his battlefield, turn target answer restores you from your graveyard to your hand. All right, so if we're making a 1/1 Archaeomancer every turn, we have a Time Warp. Well, that's GG's. That's infinite turns, as long as you can cast it. So you have Archaeomancer with Endless Evil on Archaeomancer, make a 1/1, get back spell. Also, you can do evacuation loops, which I always thought was funny with Archaeomancer. I really like that for this deck. Return all creatures to their owner's hand. I found it it's not as impactful as a Cyclonic Rift, but for budget reasons, I chose Evacuation over Cyclonic Rift, but I could definitely see this making the cut eventually. I think Cyclonic Rift is one of those cards where they get a big eye roll from the table, being 7 mana. Bounce everything you don't control. Well, I do want to bounce the things I control. Maybe not the artifacts, maybe not the enchantments, but typically I want to be bouncing my own things. So that's why instead I chose Evacuation. Sorry, going on. That was a little bit off topic there. Essence Flux. Ooh, okay. So Essence Flux, flicker a creature you control. If it's a spirit, put a +1/+1 counter on it. I seriously don't think there's a single spirit in the deck. That's not why we're running it. This becomes a 1 mana flicker, maybe a draw card, maybe draw 2 cards. Could be a removal spell. Also, Hydroelectric Specimen. We can flicker this, change target of spell back to Hydroelectric Specimen out of nowhere. It's just really flexible card in a deck like this. Plenty of things to target. It has to be you control. Keep that in mind. Exile target creature you control. Ghostly Flicker, same thing, except it's with 2 artifacts, creatures, or lands. Okay, pretty good. Graxalax comes kind of like when a creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, but if it comes blocked, you can return it to your hand. Literally only upside for this deck. Not bad. Hullbreaker Horror. Card used to be pretty pricey, jumped down in price. I think it did rotate off standard. 7/8 with flash can't be countered for a 7/7. Allows us to start bouncing things from our opponents. Allows us to return our own cards to our hands for value. Lovely in this deck. 10 Harmonicon. Double ZTBs. What's not to say? It's great. And it's any permanent, by the way. If an artifact or creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So for Candlekeep Sage, which we'll go over in just a bit, that would also trigger. Really cool. Pretty standard. If you've heard or what ETB enters the battlefield stands for, you know what Panharmonicon is. Don't have to go further. Sword of Hearth and Home. I think this sword sucks. I really do. I think this sword sucks, but it's really good in this deck. Allows us to flicker a creature, not the one that deals combat damage to a player. We can keep that equipped. We can flicker another creature we control, and then go get a land. Which we're in Dimir, so any source of ramp is super welcome. I'm taking this. It's nice. Jumped up to $12. Unfortunate. Hopefully it gets a reprint eventually. Thassa. All right, it's kind of like a cheaper Conjurer's Closet, except we get some more upsides. We get eventually an indestructible creature. With our devotion is at least more than 5 for blue. About that, I actually would recommend if you can, you probably can't later stages in the game, but if Thassa wouldn't be a creature, that'd be more beneficial because, exile target creature exists and Thassa would become a creature, so then she would get removed. So, just a heads up there. Virtue of Knowledge. This was back in, Wilds of Eldraine, I think. Essentially, it's just it's a 5 mana Panharmonicon, but we also get a 2 mana kind of instant here to copy target or activated or ability trigger you control. Not bad. Serviceable. Pretty good. Sits in exile till we're ready to cast it. You gotta be careful though when you keep an opening hand. You want to keep something that has like some interaction, and it's not too many of these Panharmonicons, Conjurer Closet effects with no creatures. That's a big thing. So, going to Graveyard Exile, Ashiok. I'm not running both Ashioks or even more than one Ashiok. I think this Ashiok's perfect enough. Spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause their controller to search the library. I don't know why this keeps coming up. I mean, it's strong. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes people think they can ignore Ashiok and then they'll go crack Fabled Passage or they'll go crack a fetch land. You can't do that. Well, you can't do that. Now you get nothing. You can't search your library. So Ashiok typically won't survive one turn around the table if people are paying attention. But what we're looking at here is that -1. So target player mills 4 cards, then exile each opponent's graveyard. Late game, we play Ashiok, we hold it for a bit, bam. This can be a 3 mana minus. Umbris is at least getting +4/+4 looking at this card, right? Top 4 cards of their library. Sick. So typically probably jumps up to 15/15. At least around that range, probably more if there's someone's a self-mill theme or maybe a graveyard theme. Really nice. And while we're on the subject, that's also why I didn't want to play Scavenging Grounds. Exile all cards from all graveyards. I want to play with my graveyard. There are some cards in this deck, I've already mentioned. You have Animate Dead, obviously. You have Archaeomancer, and I think there's another card in here. Midnight Clock allows you to shuffle your graveyard into your library. Not bad. So you do play with your graveyard a little bit. Continuing with the graveyard theme here. Dauthi Voidwalker, it has a replacement effect. If a card we put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead of a void counter. We can sack Dauthi, choosing a card opponent owns with a void counter on it. You can play it this turn without paying its mana cost. Also has Shadow for black. Not bad. Not looking to attack with it as much. I mean, you can swing with it. I mean, we're not going to block with it, so, probably should swing with it. It's just a classic graveyard hate piece, and then combines well with our Fractured Sanity that we run in the deck. Mill 14 cards. Well, if Dauthy's out, everyone's gonna mill 14, so that'd be what, 36 cards are exiled of Dauthi. Umbris is now plus 36 plus 36. Cool. It's a 37 creature with those 2 cards. Now that's the ideal situation. Is that always going to happen? No, of course not. Before we get into, we talked about the enablers. We're going to be quickly going over this enchantment here and then ramp cards. And then we're talking about what cards we're looking to flicker. And then lastly, our removal spells. So, Candlekeep Sage. I harped on this in the 1/3 lesson video. I don't think I have to do it again. But if you are looking to bounce your commander or maybe sacrifice your commander and you're in blue, maybe like a Dimir pairing. I love Dimir. When this creature enters or leaves the battlefield, draw a card. That is insane to me. I might even just run this as if you have like a commander that gets removed a lot. Well, when it enters the battlefield, I'm going to draw a card. Okay, it entered, and then someone's like, okay, well, removed. I'm gonna instantly point a removal spell. Okay, I'll draw another card. I've drawn 2 cards from casting my commander, which can then go back to the command zone. That is nuts. Now, obviously, if the commander gets countered, you're not going to see that second card. That is unfortunate, but I really love this card. Ramp. So, classic, 2 mana ramps here. Solemn Simulacrum, that's one of the cards we're looking to flicker. Enters the battlefield, search for a basic. When it dies, draw a card. ETB this. I've flickered this sucker probably like a couple turns in a row, and I'll be up on the green player and land somehow. I don't even know. It's insane. And that's why we're running 5 islands and 5 swamps. Might even jump up to 6 islands and 6 swamps. Not sure, but I think I'm pretty happy with the mana base sitting at these 30. I call it 35 lands here, just about. I count MDFCs as lands, and some people don't. Soul Ring. I hate this card. They should ban it. Moving on. Midnight Clock. Love Midnight Clock. And now, arena players, unfortunately, have been exposed to Rusko, and I am so sorry for your loss. This card is still really cool, minus Rusko. It's very thematic. I think it's done very well. 3 mana, add blue. Put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. It's okay. But at the beginning of each upkeep, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. When the 12th hour counter is put on Midnight Clock, shuffle your hand and graveyard into your library, then draw 7 cards. Exile Midnight Clock. Just refresh after a while. Just try to dump your hand, get out there, bang! Midnight Clock goes off as long as the ability's trigger is destroyed, and you get it back. You get like a fresh set of 7. Really nice. Mana Drain. So, if I'm talking about budget and stuff, why is Mana Drain in this deck? Simple. I love Umbris. I love this deck a lot. So I wanted to kind of keep it on the high synergistic, but also kind of more higher powered theme. And Mana Drain isn't sitting here because I want to like really, really win. That's why Vampire Tutor got cut. Mana Drain, I see it as a ramp spell almost. Counter target spell, next main phase, add amount of colorless. Because after a while, people keep killing Umbris. Umbris is already a 5 mana commander. Maybe you can get this to get Umbris out. And we have plenty of utility artifacts. So if we're looking to drain something that's 4, we can play a Sword of Hearth and Home, Conjurer's Closet, Spellskite, any of these guys over here, any ramp spells. Am I a responsible mana drainer? Hell no, I'm using this to ramp. Is that a good thing? Debatable, probably not. But that's just to let you know how I use it. So a normal counterspell can go in here. Mana Drain is very, very optional. Grill Philosopher, I've talked about another card I went heavily into, I think, on the 1-3 Vilson video. Really good for our horrors, turning them into potentially like soul rings. If our opponents have a soul ring, we can turn our horrors at the beginning of our turn into soul rings. Or an arcane signet. Like, we can choose at the beginning of beginning of your upkeep. Really cool. Felvar Stone. All the rest of these are just your standard artifacts you see in commander decks. No need to cover them. Okay, getting to the last portion here, the final stretch. Next, talk about our value creatures, and then our removal creatures and removal spells, and then some cards that I didn't think were for me, and then maybe some interesting synergies that I've not gone over yet. We'll see, though. So, Aether Channeler. Enters battlefield, choose one. Make a 1/1 white bird. Okay, with flying, we could chump something. Return another non-land permanent to its owner's hand. That's annoying. I thought we can flicker this guy. Hey, your commander, bounce. Get him out of here. Also, we can draw a card. In case you haven't noticed, I like drawing cards. I think, maybe a bit too much, but this deck has seen quite a bit of success. Love this deck. Agent of Treachery. Agent of Treachery was a menace back in Standard when this card was legal, way, way back then. And it's still a horrible thing to see now. Enters battlefield, gain control of target permanent. That sentence doesn't say until Agent of Treachery leaves the battlefield or something. You just own it now. It is yours. So when you drop this card, make sure you can maybe flicker him real fast. If you can flicker this card on the same turn it comes in, then I think it's worth it. You get 2 things, that opponents can't get back. You can steal lands, creatures, commanders, all that stuff. Enchantments, yada, yada, yada. Pick it, you name it. It's a good way to remove some problematic things. But I still count it as a value card instead of removal. But it could be either or. Archaeomancer. Love this card. Simple ETBs. Target instant or source from graveyard to your hand. Plenty of those in the deck. Moving on. Atris. Funny enough, you could probably swap some cards around. This is almost an Atris deck, the way we ETB stuff. Look, if you want to flicker Atris instead of Umbris, you lose a lot of kill potential sitting in the command zone that Umbris does kind of accumulate for himself. But Atris is really cool. ETBs, target opponent looks at the top 3 cards of your library, separates them into face down, face up pile. It's like kind of like a mini Factor of Fiction, and the rest go into your graveyard. Love Atris. Atris is so cool. Might make an Atris deck in the future. The only problem is I can't figure out how to win with Atris per se. You get like a bunch of fun factor fiction effects, and it's like, okay, what am I really doing? Moving on, Baleful Strix. It is Battlefield draw card. I love having this in my opening hand. It just becomes a stop sign. Leave me alone. Flying Death Touch. Do you want to swing into me if you're commander? I don't think so. You're gonna point a removal spell at my 1/1 bird? You know, kind of give people shit for that. Gonti. Somewhat of a roadblock dude, the Death Touch. Love kind of sitting and trying to get that ball rolling. 4 mana, look at the top 4 cards opponent's library, exile one of them, may look at and cast that card for as long as it remains exiled. You may spend mana as though it were. Bleh. You may look at and cast that card for as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast that spell. Another thieving effect, we do have like kind of like a sub, like kind of theft theme. That's just how Dimir ETB creatures work. It's unfortunate, it is what it is. Hostage Taker, again, that ETB kind of, hey, I'm going to exile a creature or artifact, and then I can play it on my turn, in the theft theme here. Mole Drifter, mentioned earlier, classic ETB card. Draw 2 cards as it enters. Also, could play it for 3, enters, draw 2 cards. Okay, not bad. Ruthless Technomancer. Oh god, we'll come back here in a second. And you know what, I'll just mention this for now. We'll cover this guy last as a re-attack, because there's a lot to talk about for Ruthless Technomancer. When Ruthless Technomancer enters, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, create a number of treasure tokens equal to that creature's power. You should sacrifice Umbris. We'll go into that later. Sakashima. Classic clone effect, but now the legend rule doesn't apply to permanents you control. Oh god, we can start cloning Umbris and get a bunch of triggers going that way. Maybe Atris for fun. There's a few options we have here. Spark Double. Same thing, but it doesn't have the legend rule text here. Just for Spark Double. So Spark Double isn't legendary if that permanent is legendary clause on it. But this makes all of our clone effects, be able to clone legendaries. Okay, removal. An offer you can't refuse, I think, is good. Arcane Denial. This card is unplayable if you like playing commanders in 1v1s. You playing like maybe just a friend occasionally. 4-player game. Love this card. Curse of the Swines, another exile effect for a board wipe, Decree of Pain. It's an alright board wipe. 8 mana is pretty steep, but when you can ramp up to 8 mana and you wipe that board, no one can stop it. You just draw like 9, 10 cards usually, maybe more, maybe less. Not bad. Urtai, one of our ETB creatures. If we can just flicker Urtai. Now we can threaten to destroy another target creature or planeswalker. Its controller draws a card. I've flashed an Urtai counter to spell while I've had Conjurer's Closet in the game, like already on the field, and my opponents didn't have an answer. So they wouldn't play their commanders, and they were afraid to play anything because I could just flicker Urtai at the end of my turn. So you know what I was doing? I was flickering, I don't remember, I think it was Baleful Strix at the end of my turn instead, or another creature. So I was just drawing cards while they were just sitting on their hands, not doing anything. Evacuation. I already spoke to Evacuation a little bit. Feed the Swarm, enchantment removal in black, not bad. Illithid Harvester. Illithid Harvester is really funny. So 5 mana, 4/4 horror. Plant tadpoles, tap extra creatures, they don't untap, and then the other side that matters for that is Ceramorphosis. I played Baldur's Gate, I swear. When Illithid Harvester ETBs, turn any number of target tapped non-token creatures face down. There are 2/2 horrors. So the idea is you would play the adventure side of things, then play Harvester. By doing that, you're going to turn those target creatures you turned face down into 2/2 horrors. Or you can just play it for 5 mana. Bam! Suddenly the aggro player, hey, I'm turning all your creatures face down to tap 2/2s. And they're like, wow, okay, because they didn't see that coming. This over here, it's nice, but it telegraphs what you're going to do next. And the other threat with Illithid Harvester is it becomes yet another good card to flicker at the end of your turn, or flicker when response with like an Essence Flux or something. Because you can then turn those cards, those tapped creatures, face down. As long as they're non-token, you turn them face down. They lose those abilities. Now, I have actually almost died. I think I did die to a commander that was like a 3/3 elk at one point. If you turn a commander into a 2/2 horror, it's still you still take commander damage because it's still the commander card. It's a bit jank on how that works out, but that's just how it is. Just a heads up. So if someone's a Voltron strategy and they start pumping up that 2/2, they're enchanting it, they're equipping it, you can still die that way. Be careful. Ravenous Chupacabra. It do be ravenous. Moving on. Resculpt. Better version of Raven form. Tail's End, not bad. Toxic Deluge, Premier Blackboard Wipe. I recommend picking this up. This used to be like $20. This used to be really expensive, and now it's dropped down to 5 through some reprints. When was this last reprinted? Modern Horizons 3 and Murders. Highly recommend you pick up Toxic Deluge. Really good Blackboard Wipe. Okay, and with that, we have just about covered all the cards in Umbris. Don't worry, we're not going to be going over all these ones, like, oh, I don't run Captain Dingrathar because I'm not a hard knight. We don't need to yap that much. However, I'll do some re-attacks now. Starting with Ruthless Technomancer. Ruthless Technomancer is insane. So, sacrifice another creature control, create another treasure tokens equal to that creature's power. If Umbris' power is, let's say, 15, we will make 15 treasure tokens. 15 treasure tokens. And then we can pay 3, sacrifice X artifacts, return target creature card of power X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. X can't be 0. What's interesting about this is a lot of our ETB creatures are low powered. Like, look at this. 2 power, 2 power, 2 power, 2 power, 1 power, 3 power, 1 power, 2 power, 2 power. So this is like how we also play our graveyard, is via Ruthless Technomancer. And then obviously Umbris. We can send Umbris to the yard. Now, when Umbris is in the graveyard, Umbris isn't like, a 20/20 or something. Umbris isn't like a 10/10. Umbris isn't even a 7. It's a 1/1. It's a 1/1 in the graveyard because it's not on the battlefield. So, yeah. It's a little bit spooky because you can then pay 1 for your treasures. Ruthless Technomancer can sacrifice just 3, 1 artifact, return Umbris back to the battlefield. That means if you have a way of bouncing Ruthless Technomancer, sacrificing Umbris again, bam, you have pretty much like a mana sink. You're good to go. Now, what can you do with a mana sink in this deck? We don't have like the burn spells or the drain spells in black. If I could consistently land this combo, maybe I could. And we'll talk about combos in just a second. But, there's plenty of things you can do with treasure tokens. Thassa, pay for it, tap another target creature. We can just lock down the board for the rest of the game, pretty much. And then that, we can also pay with our other ability here for Ruthless Technomancer, and we can just keep resurrecting creatures from our graveyard. Assuming they are dead, of course. Now, another re-attack. Casual gameplay versus higher power. Vampiric Tutor used to be in the deck. It's not in the deck anymore because I found it actually wasn't fun for me. 1 black, search value for a card, came way too consistent. I was usually getting Soul Ring. Funny enough, I was usually getting Soul Ring with Vampiric Tutor. But I could also just go get like Thassa, I can go get, if I have more time, Conjurer's Closet. And it just became like, well, I want to go get Candlekeep Sage. And then it's just like, it just became less fun. And it kind of took away from how special Flesh Rider was in its search effect and a few other things. So if you're playing in a higher powered, cube or like table, you could put in those effects. But I think the more tutors you have in a deck, the less casual a deck becomes. And while this deck I don't think is necessarily super fun to play against, I found myself like kind of frowning whenever I played that card, and my other friends, they're playing kind of upgraded precons, so to speak. It's still good and they do well, but that just kind of went a little bit more from the casual side of things to, hey, this looks like a CDH deck, like just now. Not cool. And am I saying Umbris is CDH? Hell no. No, far from it. This is just a kind of like a jank ETB style deck. Really fun. What else is in here? Try Puppeteer Click if you like resurrecting opponents' graveyards and stuff. I think that could work well in the deck. Lightning, again, this is Leyline of the Void. Didn't really fit for me either because, again, exiling your own graveyard. Draw Disruption got cut. Fact or Fiction I just like as a card. Unfortunately, it got cut as well. Enters the battlefield, sacrifice another creature. You gain X life, draw X card, where X is that creature's power. This one might eventually make the cut to sacrifice Umbris again. You know, I wouldn't mind drawing 10 cards, gaining 10 life. That'd be interesting. Coveted Jewel had a funny combo for Chaomancer and Ghostly Flicker. Funny enough, I forgot how it worked, but I just ended up cutting it. I think didn't make the deck list, unfortunately. And down here are some other ones. If you have any questions on maybe like why a card didn't make it in, I can probably explain it. But yeah, I think that just about covers it. Otherwise, I could keep talking for another 30 minutes here, just about random cards and things that have happened to me in games with them. Is that necessary? Probably not. We're good. So that concludes the first dive down. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you like this type of content where it's way longer and I'm just talking, you know, less kind of visuals and not to the point, but a bit more of like a runaround. If you like the content, you know, leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.